Hello, welcome back to the Necrofancy podcast. I just want to say a quick thank you to all of you who have liked and shared our social media pages now that we've gone public with this. Your support means a hell of a lot to us, and we are really, really grateful for all the love you've thrown our way. Now, with the niceties out of the way, it's time to get into today's topic. Crime and punishment in the days of ancient Rome. This is the second instalment in our ancient Rome quote-unquote series. We're talking about all the fun and very, inventive ways that Romans would punish and execute their criminals. Now, just as a base introduction, I'll give you a rundown on what was considered a crime in ancient Rome. It isn't too dissimilar from today's crimes. You've got your standard murder charges, thievery, forgery, and the most fun crime of all, blasphemy. Now, while there are a few countries in the world today that will penalise you and, in some extreme cases, actually execute you for blasphemy, they don't hold a fucking candle to ancient Rome. Blasphemy was considered such a heinous crime in ancient Roman society due to their very strong religious beliefs in the pantheon of gods that they worshipped. And if you were to go around saying you were the Messiah or you yourself were a god, you would have landed yourself in some seriously hot water with the ancient Romans. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So let's get to it. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first with the Story of Cicero. I think it would be important to tell his story as we didn't last week. Last week, obviously, for those who listened, we spoke a lot about the Roman emperors. So I think we could kind of go back a little bit on this one and establish one of the characters that lived before that. Cool. And how he was punished for his crimes. So yeah, I'll start with the story of Cicero.
Perfect.
Yeah, so prior to the first emperor of Rome, who was Octavian, we'll talk a little bit about him later in this case, Rome was a republic, which meant that the Senate held most of the power for the city. At the same time, there was a consul, which was usually two leaders who kept the society in check, and that was usually someone elected from the
Hello, welcome back to the Necrofancy podcast. I just want to say a quick thank you to all of you who have liked and shared our social media pages now that we've gone public with this. Your support means a hell of a lot to us, and we are really, really grateful for all the love you've thrown our way. Now, with the niceties out of the way, it's time to get into today's topic. Crime and punishment in the days of ancient Rome. This is the second instalment in our ancient Rome quote-unquote series. We're talking about all the fun and very, inventive ways that Romans would punish and execute their criminals. Now, just as a base introduction, I'll give you a rundown on what was considered a crime in ancient Rome. It isn't too dissimilar from today's crimes. You've got your standard murder charges, thievery, forgery, and the most fun crime of all, blasphemy. Now, while there are a few countries in the world today that will penalise you and, in some extreme cases, actually execute you for blasphemy, they don't hold a fucking candle to ancient Rome. Blasphemy was considered such a heinous crime in ancient Roman society due to their very strong religious beliefs in the pantheon of gods that they worshipped. And if you were to go around saying you were the Messiah or you yourself were a god, you would have landed yourself in some seriously hot water with the ancient Romans. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So let's get to it. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first with the Story of Cicero. I think it would be important to tell his story as we didn't last week. Last week, obviously, for those who listened, we spoke a lot about the Roman emperors. So I think we could kind of go back a little bit on this one and establish one of the characters that lived before that. Cool. And how he was punished for his crimes. So yeah, I'll start with the story of Cicero.
Perfect.
Yeah, so prior to the first emperor of Rome, who was Octavian, we'll talk a little bit about him later in this case, Rome was a republic, which meant that the Senate held most of the power for the city. At the same time, there was a consul, which was usually two leaders who kept the society in check, and that was usually someone elected from the Senate and someone who was elected by the military. The two kept each other in check and maintained the peace prior to the emergence of the first emperor. Now, with Cicero, he was a famous senator and one of the most popular figures in ancient Roman history. He's widely regarded as one of the best public speakers of all time and made a career out of public speaking against or for different politicians. Now, in this little case, we're going to be kind of focusing on the demise of Cicero and how he came towards his death and how he was punished for his perceived crimes. And the first misstep Cicero made was he rejected the triumvirate, which was a three-figure-headed system of three of the most powerful men in Rome, who at the time were Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar. Cicero believed the triumvirate was against the values of the Roman Republic, and he turned his back on the triumvirate, and that's where it all starts. From his actions, he was forced into exile for some years, but then he was pardoned and allowed to return to Rome by Julius Caesar. Cicero was not involved in the infamous assassination of Julius Caesar, which is also known as the Ides of March, when Julius Caesar was assassinated by all of the members of the Senate. Found a quite funny little quote, which I felt like I needed to include, which was that Cicero publicly roasted Julius Caesar's hairline, stating, and this is the exact quote, "When I notice how carefully arranged his hair is, and when I watch him adjusting and parting with one finger, I cannot imagine that this man could conceive of such a wicked thing as to destroy the Roman constitution." Came in hot.
It's a lot of evil bald cunts.
I couldn't actually find a...
It's a lot of evil bald cunts.
There is? I couldn't find a good bust image of Julius Caesar though to actually make out his hairline.
They do have.
I'm assuming he was going. I'm assuming he had a recedi, and he was one of them people who like didn't want to acknowledge it.
More than likely.
But wasn't Nero the one who made a law that no one could be higher than him, so people couldn't see fucking bald spot?
More like based on what we talked about last week, yeah, very likely. Yeah. Following Caesar's death, which we just spoke about, Cicero and Mark Antony were now the two most powerful men in Rome, and they were acting as consul. Cicero controlled the state, and Mark Antony acted as the head of the military. Then things turned antagonistic. Cicero publicly roasted Antony as he did Caesar, attacking his political decisions and relationships. Octavian was then named successor to Caesar, who was his nephew, and Cicero attempted to guide the young man but made a misstep when he said that he should be guided, flattered, and then disposed of. Octavian was young, but he did hear this, and it was something he would never forget. Octavian, Mark Antony, and Marcus Lepidus formed a second triumvirate with the intention to kill the enemies of Rome. Upon hearing this, Cicero fled the city, knowing he was one, and soldiers were sent after him to kill him.
Brad?
Yep.
What's a triumvirate?
A kind of political system made up of three people who were in power.
Oh, okay, cool.
Essentially, like a little bit like the consul, but it's kind of breaking the rules of a consul and assuming three people have the power opposed to two.
Two, right, okay.
But the consul wasn't like a strict thing. It wasn't like the consul had the power. The Senate still had the power, but they just kind of decided to elect someone to speak for the Senate.
Right, okay.
Cicero went back into kind of self-imposed exile and lived on the coast some 100 miles outside of Rome, assuming he was returning there to live out his days in peace. I don't think he was necessarily attempting to hide from justice or trying to get away from what he knew was coming. The soldiers did track him down. His final words were, "There's nothing proper about what you are doing, soldier, but do try and kill me properly."
Pretty badass.
Cool, yeah. His head and hands were cut off and brought to be displayed in the Senate. Mark Antony's wife pulled out his tongue and stuck pins in it, which I thought was particularly important because of how much of a well-renowned public speaker Cicero was, and how he was always kind of lauded for his oratory skills. Essentially a kind of dig post-death at him, now that he can't speak for what he believes in, I assume.
It's like saying bloody tongue.
Yeah. This is probably the best Cicero quote I've ever came across, and I think it sums up him as a character and as a person, what he believed in and his belief in the Roman Republic. And it goes like this. I have always believed that unpopularity by doing what is right is not unpopularity at all, but glory.
Fucking boy, like.
Very poignant, man.
And that is the story of Cicero. I kind of felt like it was important to start on, seeing as last week we kind of started with the empire, and it just puts it into a bit of a historical context that wasn't always the case. There was a republic before that, and Cicero was just a really fucking cool character. Like, there's a lot more to him than that. That was kind of his last years and an overview of his death. But I remember reading a book of his memoirs, which was just like him bitching about the Senate to his mate, who's called Atticus, and they managed to like preserve all these old letters that they would send back and forth of him roasting everyone.
Got dodgy tape him. Didn't trust them.
Cicero's baldy. Baldy longer, literally.
Literally the first case of a body liar.
I'd love to see that in bust form with the fucking scroll writing underneath it. Preserved baldy long hair, 280 BC.
He is baldiest, longest.
He bicks his hair.
Because he's bald.
So another notable punishment in ancient Rome, which is one I think a lot of people are readily aware of, is crucifixion. Most notably in the case of Jesus Christ, crucifixion was usually reserved for people who had committed heinous crimes, such as claiming to be a god, or murder, or revolt. And a famous case of this was the Spartacus slave revolt, in which, when the slaves were brought down, they were nailed to crosses for over 100 miles, and they were left there until the bones were picked clean by vultures. Which, even reading, doesn't make for a pretty picture.
It's pretty grim.
No, just looking on that picture on that article, and it's like, it's grim. So I'm sure one of them doesn't have a head.
I mean, it's pointless him being up there if he hasn't got a head.
Yeah, the rest of them's up there.
It's, when I was researching it, it's one of them things that I think because you hear the story so many times that it desensitizes you a little bit, and you don't actually think about like the details and the public humiliation aspect of being put up on a cross and
like
just
crucifixion was done, so you were there for the world to see, really.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate deterrent, and it's like a human being being nailed to a piece of wood and just left there is like just fucking horrendous.
It's kind of weird when like Christians and that wear a cross. I mean, like a cross necklace. Obviously, it's symbolising Jesus, but then you kind of think
there's another side to it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it only a crucifix if it's got somebody on it?
I'd assume so.
You can wear a cross necklace and it's just got the cross on, and that's just obviously a cross on a necklace. But I'm sure if it's got a little dude on it, then it's a crucifix.
Yeah, because obviously I think there's like loads of ambiguity around the cross and like it being a symbol of rebirth and kind of goodness and stuff. But then you put a person on it, it changes it completely. In 70 AD, Titus crushed another Jewish revolt, and thousands of Jews were brought to Rome, dragged through the streets and strangled at the Forum. Which, again, is kind of like I pointed out earlier, the Forum. Oh, did I go into a little detail about the Forum or not? I didn't in the Cicero bit, did I?
I don't think you did.
The Forum was like the main area of Senate activity. It was like kind of like the City Hall of Rome, and
is that where kind of online forums come from?
I'd assume so.
Yeah, I'd assume so. It's kind of where the big boys went to like do business. So if you're taken to the Forum, it's a big deal. It's like they want the world. Another common punishment which I found like disturbingly funny was the fact that they would strap wooden soles to the feet of prisoners so they couldn't escape. So to restrict the entire movement of the foot, and then imagine trying to fucking run away.
Just fucking right, everyone, like me, yeah, we're gonna fucking get out of here, right, quiet. Centurion!
You think
God!
the Nile would try to escape?
Really? So do you forget we have them fucking 2,000-year-old flossies on?
It's like on fucking Monty Python, the Holy Grail, where they haven't got a horse, they got two fucking coconuts smashing together.
I've never seen Monty Python, you know.
Oh,
like,
mate.
I know it's one of them things I need to get around. It's on Netflix, isn't it?
We should do a live fucking reaction to it.
That'll be good.
I've
Like,
tried watching Monty Python and I didn't find it funny.
I know it's like massively popular and it's got like a cult status to it.
But it's like in the life of Brian, obviously the crucifixion's in that as well. And they also got stoning. And one of the dudes gets stoned to death because he said the name of a saint or something like that. Jehovah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too sure if it's a god or whatever. But obviously it's blasphemy if you see a god or something like that. It's a mid saying like.
Yeah, we should. Pretty good idea. Actually, do a
John
stream reaction video.
John Cleese, man, he's just a fucking genius.
Yeah, John Cleese is done. I'm up for that if John Cleese is in it.
He's in all of them, so you're in luck.
There was like a group of like actors that were involved in them all. They were like a comedy troupe.
Yeah, Monty Python is a comedy thing, and then they made films. So it was John
Monty
Cleese.
Python was a like collective.
Yeah, it was John Cleese, Michael Palin. Some other dead ones.
One of them died recently, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the last point I was on was the wooden souls. Which is a fucking sick idea, to be fair. You're not going anywhere, are you?
So were they nailed to the feet or were they strapped?
Strapped, but when you think of how hard that would be, because obviously you've got to bend your foot when you run.
Yeah.
It's one, too heavy and doesn't allow your bones to move at all, so you're kind of just left to shuffle away. And like Norm pointed out, it's like you just got to hear that from a mile off.
Ah, good point. You think they would nail them to the feet because you can just easily unfucking tie a wooden block on your feet.
Maybe. It didn't really go into detail. The point I wrote down is I don't know if I just assumed they were hand tied or they probably are nailed.
Yeah, more than likely.
Yeah. I mean,
if they're nailing cunts to crosses, they're probably going to nail wooden blocks to people's feet.
They're not the most forgiving of people, are they, the Romans? They're not going to kind of do anything to make you comfortable if you're a prisoner. So yeah, I'm going to assume they were nailed.
Yeah.
This was an interesting one I found. Was that...
Norman's gone.
Norman's gone. Let's carry on. The Romans made a difference between manifest and non-manifest theft, and this was basically the only thing it was dependent on was how close the suspect was to the scene of the crime. That is how punishment was dished out. So if there was a theft, manifest was by far the worst, and it involved flogging or even death. Even death. So if a robbery went down and they're looking for a suspect and you're just there, then you're just going to be said to be, the suspect of manifest theft.
Man, just fucking scroll on your phone on your fucking lunch break, having your fucking
yeah,
fucking sausage sarnie.
Hey mate, did you just nick 35 gold statues from that gaff? No mate, I've been fucking Flappy Bird. I'm eating me sarnie. Get here. Get this fucking wood on you, you little cunt. So yeah, there was just so little justice when it came to punishing people for committed crimes. It was essentially just like a potluck system of, right, let's get a criminal. Doesn't matter if we get the criminal. We just need to get a criminal.
It's probably like, we've got some spaces in the crucifixion line. So
aye, whack him in.
Fill them up.
He's done sweet fuck all wrong, but didn't like his face. This was a good one. It's called Homo Sacer. I think that's how to pronounce it. And that was a term given to people who break oaths, and it translates as man who is set apart.
Set apart. Yeah, I remember reading about this one actually.
Yeah, and it was recognised like as a real legal dispute. If you broke an oath, you became a homo sacer, and a homo sacer. I don't know. And it was often vigilantes would impose this on people, like if they felt that there was someone in society doing things wrong or breaking oaths, they would impose that on them. called him a homosexual, and then the punishment to that was that he could just literally be killed by anyone with impunity.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So you were pretty much just marked for death.
Marked for death, yeah. Basically, again, based on pretty much
Nothing.
fuck all. Yeah.
So I'd be dead, considering how late I fucking came into this fucking podcast.
You
So
would be alive
I'm
right
fucking
now.
crucified, fucking cat of nine tails, all that shit.
Mate, I would have homosexual you about fucking 6 years back.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck knows who else would be doing this podcast, but... Yeah, I found it funny that they did draw the line at ritually sacrificing anyone who was a homosexual, though, so you could kill them, you just couldn't sacrifice them.
Oh!
It makes it fine. It makes it absolutely fine. I did
fine,
nothing wrong, but as long as you've done sacrifices, yeah, you can just stab us 50 times. Shall I pass over to you, Alex? Do you want to take a few points?
Yeah, so I was focusing on military punishments. So when a Roman soldier enrolled in service to the state, he swore a military oath known as the Sacramentum, which was originally to the Senate and the Roman people, and then later to the general and to the emperor. The Sacramentum stated that he would fulfil his conditions of service on pain of punishment up to and including death. Discipline in the army was extremely rigorous by modern standards, and the general had the power to summarily execute any soldier under his command. Polybius, a Greek historian, divides the punishments inflicted by a commander on one or more troops into punishments for military crimes and punishments for so-called unmanly acts, although there seems to be little difference in the harsh nature of the punishment between the two classes. So, in terms of crimes, a soldier could face flogging in front of the century, the cohort, or the legion, which is just divisions of the military. If a treason or theft, the punishment would most probably be being placed in a sack of snakes and thrown into a nearby river or lake. And so the worst one, in my opinion, is the fustuarium or the bastinado, which is the same thing, but one of them's an easier fucking name. So following a court-martial sentence for desertion or dereliction of duty, the soldier will be stoned or beaten to death by cudgels in front of the assembled troops by his fellow soldiers, whose lives he had put in danger. Soldiers who had been sentenced but escaped were not pursued but lived under sentence of banishment from Rome. So even if you managed to run away from the punishment, you could never set foot back in Rome. Although I don't know if that means it's empire as well. I sure it just means, Rome.
I was going to say, you've pretty much got fucking nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
The entire empire.
So Rome
Did
city centre.
consider Rome
Iceland?
to be everywhere where they are. What they
Yeah.
didn't
True.
continent,
Yeah.
Yeah, you fucked on it, yeah. Another punishment in the Roman military was only applied to people involved in the prison system. The rule was that if a prisoner died due to the punishment inflicted by Roman legionaries, unless he was given the death penalty, then the leader of the troops would be given the same punishment. Which it's not forgiven, but it's fair.
Yeah.
That's
So like if you were sentenced to be flogged and you died halfway through the flogging,
He's a bit of a bitch.
deliberately die just to fucking fuck them over.
just to ruin someone
I'd love
else's
to
day.
die in spite.
That's
the
my
fucking
biggest
best
goal, is
way
to
to
die
die.
in spite of somebody.
Yeah.
In terms of punishments for unmanly acts, there was only like one I would find that had a lot of detail in, and I touched on it last episode about decimation. So in Latin it is decimatio, and it's a form of extreme military discipline used by officers in the Roman army to punish mutinous or cowardly soldiers in exceptional cases. A cohort selected for punishment by decimation was divided into groups of 10. A cohort is like a group of soldiers, like a platoon or a battalion, something like that. I think it was around 460 men, something like that.
Specific. Round it up. That's
Each
annoying.
group-
That's annoying as fuck, actually. Round it up.
That really pissed me off when I read it. It's just marked at 500 for fuck's sake. Each group effectively drew straws, and the soldier that had drew the shortest straw was executed by his 9 comrades, often by stoning or clubbing. The remaining soldiers were given rations of barley instead of wheat and were forced to sleep outside of the Roman encampment. This punishment was forgotten over time since the early Republic, but the ancient punishment was resurrected by Marcus Crassus during the Spartacus Gladiator Rebellion in 72 BC, when 2 of his legions disobeyed his direct orders not to engage the enemy. As a result, they suffered a terrible defeat, and Crassus's response to the disobedience was brutal. He assembled the 2 legions and pulled out every 10th man as he walked across the ranks. Each man who was pulled out was to be beaten to death by his preceding 9 comrades. So always be first, never be last. That's the only advice I've got to give you on that front.
Yeah.
Bit late to give them advice, like, but fair enough.
Well, I'm fucking 2,000 years late, but fuck you. Should have been fucking fannying about. Do what you fucking told you in the army.
You shouldn't have been fannying about. Yeah, this is a little bit, goes in depth a bit more on what you were saying, Alex, about the flogging. This is a specific flogging technique, which is just disgusting. And this was usually used on slaves, not probably wouldn't be used on the military. And it was a stick tipped with bone.
Oh.
Alright.
To tear at the flesh of slaves. And it was so brutal that a lot of the slaves died from just being flogged with the bone on a few hits. To make it even worse, they were actually drawn up with weights tied to their feet so that they couldn't even writhe in pain.
Oh, fucking hell.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. All of a sudden that makes it so much worse that they couldn't even like react
can't even
to
like
pain.
give you like a rope.
Yeah. Because I know, like, it seems like it makes... I don't think it actually does make it better, but it's like a...
It's a psychological thing, yeah.
It is a psychological thing. Imagine stubbing your toe on the door and then having to stand still. It's
See,
like
if I stub my toe, someone's getting punched.
if I stub my toe, I'm running fucking 5k. Like,
Kind of like when your foot gun's dead.
yeah,
And you can't,
Exactly.
like, you get like the pins and needles thing, but
yeah,
you can't move because it gets worse.
yeah.
So
Imagine that. but
you just gotta
being
fucking take it.
smacked about with a bit of bone on a stick.
Ugh.
Fuck. I mean,
What bone are they using?
I don't know, man. They just seem to
I
have
think it's
access
worse
to
if it's like a
absolutely everything.
human bone.
It probably is. You know, they're no holds barred, and yeah, that was the end of that point. They're fucking disgusting, man. In the reign of Nero, 400 slaves were executed because one of them had killed their master, and the one who had killed the master hadn't been found. So she took the 400 and killed them all.
I mean, you're about to get at least one of the right ones out of 400.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or he's
Odds
fucked
are.
off.
Well,
Or he's
give like
Or he's just long
even
gone.
better, he's fucked
Viewer
off. He's
number
watching 400 in his marriage
401.
getting knocked. Yeah. Went down to the
Um,
bookies that day and stuck a tenner on them getting fucking, I don't know, Octilius
Beaten to
Maximus
death.
or some shit.
So I have one here called Damnatio ad Bestias, which is
Oh,
Latin
this is the
for
fucking death. Like by animals or
condemnation
some shit,
to
innit?
beasts.
Yeah.
It was a form of Roman capital punishment in which the condemned person was killed by wild animals, usually lions or other big cats. This form of execution, which first came to ancient Rome in the 2nd century BC, was part of the wider class of blood sports known as bestiari. The act of damnatio ad bestias was considered entertainment for the lower classes of Rome. Killing by wild animals, such as Barbary lions, formed part of the inaugural games of the Flavian Amphitheatre in AD 80, which, there's no like setting a game off than watching someone get fucking torn to shreds by a lion.
I'd be hyped.
Mm.
To be fair, that would be pretty sick to see. I'd pay to watch that. Anyway, between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD, this penalty was also applied to the worst criminals, runaway slaves, and, of course, Christians. The exact purpose of early damnatio ad bestias is not known, and it might have been a religious sacrifice rather than a legal punishment, especially in the regions where lions existed naturally and were revered by the population, such as Africa, India, and other parts of Asia. The custom of submitting criminals to lions was brought to ancient Rome by 2 commanders. Oh, fuck me, here we go. Lucius Aemilius Paulus Macedonius,
Let's call him
who
Paul.
defeated the Macedonians in 167 BC, and his son Scipio Aemilianus.
Sid.
I
Paul
think
and
I
Sid.
nailed that. Who conquered the African city of Carthage in 146 BC. It was originally a military punishment, possibly borrowed from the Carthaginians. Rome reserved its earliest use for non-Roman military allies found guilty of defection or desertion. The sentenced were tied to columns or thrown to the animals, practically defenceless. Which, obviously, you just are defenceless if you're tied to a post and you're going to get your fucking stomach...
Yeah, you don't really
But
have the upper
defensively-
hand, like...
Yeah, nah.
You can put your leg up, but it's just kind of get bitten straight off. So I cannot really see.
I think the odds are indefinitely against you versus a lion, no matter the scenario. So if you tie it with a pole,
I don't know.
I don't know, because if you've got a
If you go, it might like you know.
I didn't think
go,
of. I didn't think of.
You're going on safari, and you let us know what it works out for you, right?
I'm not taking like the whole thing about like the drive-through safaris is stupid because your car's gonna get fucked.
Mate, that video of the rhino running after the car.
Yeah,
Fuck
Cool.
that.
Yeah.
like the one where the fucking lion just opens the fucking door.
Yeah.
But you think
What
the
did
first
you
thing you do is put the child lock on?
Well, no, because you can open a child lock from the outside. That's the point.
I don't have children. I don't.
I hope you never,
So
for,
I'm not
for your
experienced.
sake and theirs, I hope you never have children. The use of damnatio ad bestias against Christians began in the 1st century AD. Tacitus, who was a Roman historian and a politician, states that during the first persecution of Christians under the reign of Nero, our boy,
Oh boy.
this took place actually after the fire of Rome. People were wrapped in animal skins and thrown to dogs, which I believe we touched on last episode, actually.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah. This practice was followed by other emperors who moved it into the arena and used larger animals. Application of damnatio...
Someone caught them doing it. Yeah, have you seen what fucking Nero's doing? He's figured this shit out.
Application of damnatio ad bestias to Christians was intended to equate them with the worst criminals who were usually punished this way. There is a widespread view among contemporary specialists that in the prominence of Christians among those condemned to death in the Roman arena was greatly exaggerated. There is no evidence for Christians being executed at the Colosseum in Rome. But there probably was, though, if you think about it.
It's
There was
It's
evidence
Rome.
at least
fucking Rome.
10.
They're gonna.
I'm gonna hit any historian with a
That way.
did it though.
That way, though.
Oh, wait.
Were you there? No, you weren't.
Contemporary historian Brad Sampson. Oh,
Yeah, well,
oh well, lad.
But if it was, best quote ever.
But, according to Roman laws, Christians were 1. Guilty of high treason. They were found guilty of high treason because of their worship. Christians gathered in secret and at night, making unlawful assembly, and participation in such collegium illicitum or coitus nocturni was equated with a riot. Somehow. Some fucking how.
What, just standing around?
Just meeting up at night to go and pray was equated to a riot.
At this point, it's just whatever the fuck I see you doing and whatever the fuck I decide to charge you with, that's what's happening.
Aye.
Again, if I was Roman Emperor, there'd be a lot of deaths.
Aye. So suck it
Just
up because
People who chew loudly, use a fucking gang.
Oh yeah.
People who
straight
take their
away.
shoes off on fucking public transport, yous are getting put straight to fucking lions.
people who walk really, really slowly in front of you, what you's rioting for? What you's causing mass desecration for?
Yous actually getting the
Yous
place
haven't.
now. I'm trying to get the shops yous are causing a rat. Kill them, get them done. Can't be get the lions in. Can't be
People
fucking
wearing
horses.
gloves.
Great. Are you going to expand on that?
No,
Fucking
like-
hands, man.
You
The
good?
whole I like going in the shop and that. The whole thing of like face masks are alright.
Oh, you're
Gloves.
talking about... Oh, right.
Aye.
I interpreted
Oh,
just
right,
as,
okay.
like, just
I
winter
thought you were going
gloves.
to say
Aye.
a pair of woolly gloves.
Touch.
Yeah.
Hate gloves. No, but like gloves, they're meant to be. As soon as you touch something, you're meant to take them off and put them in the bin. But go like thinking you're safe because you got gloves on, but you're touching everything. You're touching your fucking phone.
It's exactly
touching the
what I thought
basket.
as well, yeah. When I went
So this is
into
why
Tesco.
this is what I went to Sainsbury's today, and I just hockled on everything, so everyone's equal.
Yeah. Herd immunity. Yeah.
Just spat on all the bagels. None of the crumpets were safe.
No.
I didn't,
Like-
just in case like some
They
sort
got
of
none of
law
your,
enforcement
just
was listening to
put
this.
your
I didn't
finger in it,
spit
like-
on anything.
Not getting any of the CDs back either.
Nah,
You
I mean, that curtain rail's getting dragged straight down from the wall. Notable victims, according to various Christian traditions of damnatio ad bestias, were Ignatius of Antioch in AD 107, Saint Glyceria in AD 141, Saint Blandina in AD 177, Perpetua and Felicity, I couldn't tell you who that is, Germanicus.
Wasn't Germanicus the son of someone Norm had last episode?
Germanicus was Tiberius's cousin or nephew.
Some shit. I recognise it from the last episode.
It was his great nephew. But yeah, I doubt it's that same Germanicus.
Oh, right, fair enough.
And there was a guy called Agapius who actually has a Wikipedia page. He was a Christian martyr killed at Caesarea in AD 306. But of course, I don't know if any of these people actually fucking existed because it's from the Bible. So, you know. There's people who apparently survived. An early description of escape from the death by devouring is in the story of Daniel in the Book of Daniel. I don't know what that is. Sounds like it's from the...
I reckon Daniel wrote that.
It's definitely written by someone called Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel. You're fooling
This
me.
is my book.
Daniel Bedingfield.
He's got to get through this.
He's got to get through this.
Yes.
The Greek writer Apion tells the story of a slave, Androcles, during Caligula's rule, who was caught after fleeing his master and thrown to a lion. The lion spared him, which Androcles explained by saying that he pulled a thorn from the paw of the... Right, so that didn't happen, then did it? Because one, it was a mouse who pulled the fucking thorn out of the paw of a lion. You're not pulling the fucking wool over my eyes, Wikipedia. I know what happened in Aesop's Fables. It was a mouse, and the fucking lion and the mouse were best mates. So fuck you.
Tell him.
There was a guy called Paul. That's it.
Right.
Sweat, it just says Paul.
There's a guy called Paul who was just chilling. Moving on.
Man was just there lying.
He's alright, but I don't trust him.
So yeah, in terms of if this actually happened, it's a bit fucking up in the air, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah.
I reckon what would happen, like, you pull the phone of a lion, he looks at it and just fucking swipes at you straight away.
I want to say, like, either way, if you manage to get close enough to a lion and you manage to somehow gain its trust and you pull the thorn out of the paw of a lion. Actually, I even say that. I've seen, like, I'm fairly sure a lion can, like, tack a bullet and still fuck your shit up.
Yeah,
so it's probably tack a thorn in the paw.
Fucking machine, man.
It's a fucking absolute... Well, I mean, it is literally an animal.
Yeah.
But, like, it's a fucking absolute tank.
That's something that can just probably just choose not to feel pain.
I'm pretty sure if it was a Barbary lion, which I'm not too sure if they're extinct now. Yeah, so Barbary lions are extinct, but I'm fairly sure they were bigger than most modern lions. It's gonna be fine.
Aye.
It's probably gonna be fine.
It'll probably, like... It's annoying, but... Get over it.
It'll probably be, yeah. And like you said, normally you gotta get there, pull the thorn out, and then just get your fucking throat torn out.
I'm gonna make one of them fucking shitty ass, like, lion alpha quote pictures.
Oh, fuck it up.
When you walk around with a thorn in your paw, but it'll be alright because you just get on with it.
Because you're just massive and you're a hard cunt.
Lion, not so scary once fawn come out.
Share if you're an alpha who ignores the thorns in his life and is devoid of any meaning, so has to accuse the lack of loyalty of others.
You all good there, champ?
Yeah, just share it.
Share this in lion comes in your sleep.
If you don't, I'll just make another one about how you're not loyal, so it just keeps fucking stacking up against you, fam.
Keep good mates next to you, keep bad mates away. This is the word of the land.
Oh man.
The lion says if we were mates and you had a thorn in your paw and I had a thorn in my paw, then I'd pull you a thorn out and I would pull my thorn out because that's what mates do.
Tom Hardy.
Some people. This is all like just big block text in front of a picture of like Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy smoking in a fucking suit because apparently, you know, anytime anyone says something cool, it's Tom Hardy in a suit.
Any other time, yeah. Right. So who's next?
I'll go.
No, I'm go for it.
Yeah. there's before it was an actual punishment. Like there was, like the robots.
Oh, you got to talk about scaphism.
Are you just saying robots in like a German
Robots.
accent?
Robots.
Robots.
Robot.
The thing about robots is
Yeah, so like before it was a punishment, it was like quite a high fucking value job. But then as the demand came up for like wars and all that, they just started saying that I just fucking put criminals, all the fucking slaves and anything, just chuck them in there. Because at first you would want like, a person who would care about the job and like someone trained in that rather than some criminal who's fucking, I don't know, stole a fucking sausage.
it's mad that because I think that just fucking no one could swim.
Yeah.
That's just the thing that like the water was just not something anyone was going to fucking deal with.
I mean, most of the criminals back then probably would have never seen a fucking ocean or been on a boat.
No, but you haven't talked about what scaphism actually is. It's not. You're not just put on a boat. What happens is it's two identically sized rowboats. You put in one of them, and the other rowboat goes on top of you, and there are holes for your head, arms, and legs. And then what happens is you're covered in milk and honey, so
the mosquitoes can like lay eggs and shit.
So all of the flies.
It's absolutely fucking disgusting that I know that.
Yeah, so the flies would come and like eat you, and feast upon your skin and lay eggs in you, and then
Eat your man. Sorry, yeah. Go on.
And you were kept alive during the entire thing because they would come and force feed you more milk and honey. And I imagine after a while, if you ate nothing but milk and fucking honey, then you're probably just gonna absolutely shit you back out. So you're lying there in your own filth, covered in flies, with eggs being laid in your skin.
Lovely.
And then eventually you just fucking die.
Just me having a fucking hangover.
I mean, like, the Ronin and that, like, they were all, like, fucking chained together in, like, massive rows and that, fucking. They couldn't get up and walk around. They had to go to the toilet there, so they were covered in fucking shit and piss. Probably spew from all the fucking bobbing down the sea.
People covered in shit and piss.
And obviously, like, fucking the ship guns down, they're not going to fucking let them gun out. So they were fucking gone down with the ship. So, like, people would rather get put to death than do that because it was basically, like, worse than death.
I'm pretty fucking caught up on, like, the idea that people couldn't swim. I'm like, not that, obviously if you have, like, an innate fear of water, which everyone did back then, no one's going to, like, learn to swim, but does everyone who doesn't know how to swim, if they're all dropped in water, do they all drown? Or can
I'm sure panic kicks in and you'll eventually tread water.
Yeah, that's what I mean, like, because obviously you're led to believe that anyone who can't swim, who hasn't learned to swim, is going to drown. Or does, like, instinct sometimes tell you how to, like a dog? Like, if you just drop a dog in water, the chances of them surviving is pretty high because they're just going to, like, doggy paddle.
Yeah, they're just going to run.
But obviously, I don't know about you, but I went to, like, swimming lessons and shit. She taught, like, yeah, you have to learn. But I'm like, if I didn't, would I just go in some water and drown, or?
I don't know, because
it depends on the situation, because, like, I think if you dropped in the sea and you haven't had salt water in your fucking eyes and that, you probably fucking panic about that. If it's cold...
I'd probably drown in the sea and I can swim.
If it's, like, really cold, if you jump in, your first thing is go... tap that, and then if you're underwater, you probably take in loads of fucking water and drown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and another thing about, like, people rowing on boats, the sentence was, like, about 10 years. But they would get fucking forgot about. So the 10 years would come up and they'd be like, oh, I've already gone now. You fuck. You fucking keep going, mate.
Yeah, but think of the fucking upper body strength you're gonna walk away from. You can't
fucking arms.
It's like the ultimate gym workout on it.
You gotta be fucking absolutely massive after 10 years doing no people going aboard.
I'd be alright on a
probably
row.
just
I love the
dying
row
exhaustion.
machine in the gym.
Rowing's class. So fucking good for you.
Mainly,
Not in that
I love it
context,
because when you're rowing, it blows fucking air at you. So it's your own personal fan. If you want to get cool, I fucking can for it.
I had like a little bit of a extension on what you said about being tossed in the river in like with an animal. That was called, I'm gonna butcher this, but puenaculi.
Yeah.
Puenaculi, and it was another like creative Roman punishment for a particular type of crime, and this was reserved for people who had mostly killed members of their own family.
Oh.
The person who had committed the crime had their head covered in wolf skin and given sandals, and that's all they would wear, and they would wait in prison until a sack was made for them. And then they were put into a sack with a dog, a snake, a monkey, and a rooster, and they'd be thrown into the river or the ocean. And there was this kind of like divine meaning to it all of like...
How big's the sack?
Yeah,
Well,
that's what I was thinking.
surely a sack just takes like a fucking day.
Mate, they're getting custom made sacks for them just to die in.
Imagine like just waiting in the corner. All them
This
other
is another
animals
cool,
fucking fighting you like, oh.
There's another cool Cicero quote to go along with it. He kind of like explains it a bit more. This is only part of the full quote because it was really long, so I just kind of picked what I thought was most relevant. And it goes, "Do they not seem to have cut the parasite off and separated him from the whole realm of nature, depriving him at a stroke of sky, sun, water, and earth, and thus ensuring that he who had killed the man who gave him life, should he be denied the elements from which it is said all life derives?" So it's this kind of idea that like you don't have a resting place, but you just kind of...
okay.
It's a fucking hard quote to understand when you read it out, but when I went through and read it a few times, it kind of does make sense. And it's like they're getting at that there's an animal with you from like different walks of life, and that you'll never return to nature. It's a fucking elaborate way of like poetically killing someone, but
yeah,
that's
it's
what
a
the
lot
Romans
way
were.
of saying it's a shit way to die.
Basically, yeah. I had another, which I found quite interesting, and it was the punishments, particularly in the patriarchy. Because Rome was an inherently patriarchal society, a Roman, what was known as paterfamilias, and that was the oldest living male of a family was the paterfamilia, had the power to had the power to kill anyone in his own house with impunity, like anyone from his family, and that actually extended beyond his family and just his house and into his family. So he could kill his wife, son, daughter, like auntie, uncle, if they lived apart from him or whatever. But historians have said that it was done very little in practice. However, it gave the head of the family a carte blanche, which is to say that they can act in whichever way they see fit without consequence.
Christ, I wouldn't have a fucking family left. You know how many bad days I have?
Yeah,
Just
no.
coming home from work and you're the head of the family and you're fucking fuming and like someone just knocks a vase over and it breaks. Nah, that's poor.
You got in the book.
The OG fucking stellar wife beaters in Rome. This is like another point to go on that. It says, however, the crime had to be committed against the state for this to be legal, so it isn't as it sounds. It's not just like you come home, have a bad day and just fucking kill your wife. It's it's for an example is the senator Quintus Fabius Maximus Eburnus is said to have killed his son for dubious chastity. But punishing a crime of a sexual nature was not seen as a proper use of a father's power, so the father himself was tried and exiled for like abusing his own paterfamilian power, I would probably call it. Yeah, so it wasn't like